with Google Hangouts.
Ooh, this Hangout is live on air. Welcome to maybe the first in a series of interviews I want to do with people who I'm interested in, who are creating stuff that I think is interesting. I don't know how this will go. Maybe this will be the only time I do this, but maybe there'll be more. So my name's Chris Wilson, and I am joined by Jeremy Smith. Hello, Jeremy.
I feel like this is the Titanic, and this is the taking off. And if I wreck it, then sorry, Charlie, it's not going to work.
I feel like this is more like the blind leading the blind. And
that's just an iceberg. We can run right through it. It's going to be okay. We're a big, mighty ship. We got this.
Yeah, iceberg. Like, that's what we were made to do. Iceberg was set there as a challenge. It's clearly what it's for.
That's actually what they said whenever they were on the Titanic was, it's just an iceberg. We can get through this one.
Yeah.
And then things happened.
What are those ships called, which are like icebreakers? Yeah, it was clearly an iceberg. So yeah, Jeremy, why don't you just tell anyone who's listening, if there is anyone listening, a little bit about you, what do you do, stuff like that.
So my workday job is I'm a clinical counselor, and I meet with a lot of different people doing a lot of different things, talking about a lot of different struggles in life, but just everything you see on TV as far as therapy is concerned. That's kind of what I do. And on my hustle hours, the time after I'm spending with my family, the time after I'm working at work and trying to pay the bills, I do a lot of stuff with Church Mag. I do a lot of stuff just creative and just practicing and trying new things. One of the things that I've heard over and over again from people, whether it's been Steve Jobs or whether it's been all the way to the person that established and created College Humor, is just go out there and create something. And you don't necessarily have to know how to do it, but just try it. And that's what I've been kind of doing, is just trying things out, and I love to experiment. And so you find me on the web, but you might not necessarily know exactly what you're going to get, because I'm always trying to do something a little bit differently. Hence why I'm here right now.
Cool. Yeah, so I know Jeremy from Church Mag. We both do some stuff there. We're both staff writers there. And I noticed that, I guess maybe 6 months ago, would that be about right, that you started doing things, you started maybe upping your game in a few areas. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Especially, you set up your new site. How long ago was that?
That was probably about 6 months ago, where I decided just to do a personal site. And instead of, I used to do my own websites, and I did that for a time, but now this is just kind of like who is Jeremy himself. And so it's more of that personal nature, kind of like what you have for your blog, but you seem to be really diving into your hobbies, where I'm just sticking back in hobbies, but then blog and everything in between.
Yeah. But I think also around the same time, I think I noticed that you upped your social media game as well, especially on Twitter. Would you say that is a fair, like, this is what I perceived? Was that intentional, or was it just a byproduct or something that naturally happened?
I think it's a byproduct of just the process. I was doing a lot for my own website whenever it was up and running a year and a half ago, and I decided to let that go. Eric Dye took that on. And so I was already doing that a lot before. And even before that, I was doing social media management. So the chops were already there. I already knew, like, how do I get a strategy, and how do I get people to engage in this process? And so that was already there. I had already learned how to build up the audience. And then I started doing that for Church Mag. So actually there's kind of the 6 months, there was a lull before that, between my website and what I was doing on my personal site. So I've been doing a lot of stuff for Church Mag, trying to kind of jump that to the next level. And so I have strategies already in place for that. And then that, after those routines started going, I jumped on for my own stuff. And so it's just kind of a process of, okay, this is established, so let's move on to the next thing. I'm one of those people that if I try to multitask and do Church Mag and mine, and then maybe something over here, all of it's going to fall apart. And I know that about myself, where I am such a linear thinker. I mean, when I sit in my counseling classes, as far as with my clients, they know that if I try to get off topic, my sticky note comes out. And so I'm writing things down and they're just like, oh, Jeremy's just being Jeremy. And if we really get into a session and I printed like a handout for them to do as far as homework, a lot of times, I'm talking more than 50% of the time, I forget to pick up that worksheet because I'm just so linear in that investment. And so that's what happened as far as social media is at this point, I've upped my game as far as social media on my own personal brand, because everything else is already established and I'm doing that well.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so it's interesting though, because when I noticed that you'd done that about 6 months ago, that things had been starting to change. And then more recently, like I took a bit of a reevaluation of what I was doing with my site, which was something I'd started at the beginning of the year, this new one. And I was thinking, well, what do I want to get out of it? What's my goals? And I looked at a lot of what you were doing, and I got very inspired by it. And that's a big reason why I wanted to interview you, or just have a chat with you, really. It's not supposed to be so much of an interview.
Bros being bros, right?
Exactly. But yeah, so some of the stuff that I thought was kind of interesting was, I love how honest and how, like, as you described it, how you are on your own site. Like, it's very much, I think I can see that you're not trying to be like, oh, I need to be part of this niche and I need to do this seriously, and I can't write about this because that would dilute my focus. But at the same time, it's quite focused as well, I feel, in a strange way.
Sure.
Because
I think that the focus in and of itself has just come because I've been doing this for a little while, and so I know where my strengths are, my weaknesses are. Like, you don't see me sitting there talking about politics and global missions and stuff like that, because I don't know that stuff. I don't know how to do that well. I don't even think I have a voice in that process. And so in this whole thing that I've been doing as far as social media, I know what I'm good at, and I don't have to hide behind this is what everybody else is talking about, and so I'm going to talk about it too. And I already have a little bit of a voice, whether it's family and Christianity, whether it's counseling, whether it's social media. I know what I'm talking about, and so I'm speaking from a place where I feel comfortable. And I think when I first started doing social media, as far as the blogger, when I first started trying to engage in there, I didn't know any of this. And so this is fairly brand new in the grand scheme of things. I mean, like 4 years old total, but I've been learning how to engage well with that process. And so I've been working on it as I've gone along. It's not like I just magically, Jeremy knows what he's talking about. It's taken a lot of effort to get to that point.
Yeah, I think I can see that. And I think maybe that's it reminds me of this idea that I've come across where, you do serious focus practice with lots of attention, so that then later on you can do it without even thinking about it. It's like unconscious inadequacy, conscious inadequacy, and then conscious adequacy and unconscious adequacy. And like that last stage is supposed to be where you've practiced a skill so much that almost without even thinking, you know where to go. Like playing the guitar, you know where the G chord is without even having to look up a chord sheet or something like that.
Absolutely. And when I do counseling, that's where you have to work from, because when you're in a crisis situation and you're struggling with your marriage, or you're trying to work on yourself and you're feeling really depressed, or you're using drugs and you're like, how do I stop having these cravings? In that moment, you're not thinking rationally. And so you have to have those habits. And it's the same whether you're using skills for mental and substance use, or you're playing football. Football, you have those skills in general inherently, but then you have to practice, because for American football, you throw the football, you have to know where they're going. Even soccer, if you expect your person to be there, you kick the ball and you anticipating where they're going to be. It's all muscle memory at that point. Same thing, violins or the orchestra, you need to play as a group. And so social media is just yet another skill where you are practicing and practicing. And so that first time you get out there, try it out. See if you're a little bit good at it, if you have that natural bent to it. And if you do, excellent. But don't expect to be the next Michael Hyatt on this process, because you're going to have to get there. You're going to have to develop those skills like any craft you have.
Yeah, I've shared a couple of things recently, actually, on Twitter. A couple of links to things. One was from, I think, Zen Pencils, and one was from Zen Habits. A theme there which is interesting, but like they were both about like sucking at first, and like the importance of being okay to suck first, so that later you can be good at something. And like I think, especially in our modern world, we expect to be good overnight. So like speaking personally here, I thought, I've been taking photos for a while. I can do some okay photos. So it will only take me like a couple of months maybe to get good enough to, do this a lot better, to build up a bit of a platform, to get my side project going quite well. And within like those couple of months, like nothing happened basically. And I realized, I think about 6 months in, man, I suck more than I thought I sucked. Like I am so much worse than I thought I was. And now, like even now, I realize I'm so bad still compared to the point I want to be at. But like it's okay, because it's not about overnight success, and whichever metric you use to measure that. Speaking of, oh, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, and in that process, you have to realize these people have been doing it a long time, and so they're already paving the way. And so there's something good to be said for, you don't have to have as many bumps in the road because you just follow other people. So if you're wanting to get into social media, you find those that are doing so much social media well, and you learn from them. And I would say you don't just learn from them passively, but you should learn from them actively. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing that people don't do well, is they try to emulate, but from a place that they don't really understand in that process. And yet if you ask them, why is it that you do this? Why is it that you do this? And it makes sense for their business or for their hobby or for their ministry, then you take that, you crumple it up, and then you reform it into something that's useful for you in this process. And so that you can actually just learn from them in this process. But at the same time, realizing that they've had a lot of things in the background. And if you just keep trying to learn from them over time, you will slowly get there. You'll develop that process. I know whenever I used to do social media consulting for churches, a lot of the churches said, teach us everything you know about social media for these $40 it's going to be for this consultation. And it's like, people get $30,000 degrees, and you want everything I've learned in that process for $45. The same thing with our time. You want to be able to do everything someone did for 7 years in the next month or two. That's unrealistic for yourself. You're going to burn out. You're going to fail. Now, you can have an accelerated process, but you got to give yourself some time for your own self and for just trying to figure out where you're headed in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things I've started doing recently is to try and make my, my studying of people a bit more active, is taking notes for things which are like of high educational value. So when I listen to, there's a few podcasts which are really good about photography, about creating, about faith as well. And when I listen to those, I have my notebook with me, paper notebook, so I don't have the distractions of anything else. And I'm writing down like bullet points, headings, main things. And at the end, I always try and ask myself, what was new, what was most powerful, and what am I going to do after having listened or read this? And and I found that has had a bit more of an impact. Sometimes, especially with some podcasts, you get to the end and it's kind of like, well, there was nothing new, but it was fun, so who cares? But sometimes I've got a really good action point, something which I can try out or implement and learn from. But you mentioned about actively asking people about why they're doing something. Do you have any other? Are there any other things that you do or think about for like trying to be more actively learning or actively engaged?
I always love to operate from a would I personally like this, or is this something that I would just kind of rip to shreds for someone else? And I'm a very critical person. I in my counseling process of just learning who I am, I've really tried to develop boundaries because I love to experiment. I love to do more than just my counseling side of things, where my counseling is using my relational aspect. And then I love to be just a nerd and look at stats and all these things. And so there's a lot of time that is invested in that. And so whenever I get online, I'm very critical of this is just not working for me, mute. This person's just bugging me, block them. And so I get very critical very quickly. And so I just think, what is it that I want to get out of this process that for other people might be really intentional and really appropriate? And I also only go from, like I said before, only from my strengths, because if I try to work from a sense of developing something, it's going to take so long to get there. I love how you're doing photography, and I wish I had the time and the resources to go there. Doesn't mean that I couldn't eventually get there, but right now I just don't have the energy or the bandwidth to do that. And so I'm just going to be realistic, and every time I see a photo I really love that could be great for a blog post, guess what kind of email you're getting from me?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, like, I guess I'm fortunate. I'm gonna say that, but take that with salt. That, like, I'm only just recently married and I don't have kids yet,
Sure.
or any on the way, as far as I know. So like, from that point of view, I do, and like, my job affords me a lot of time to do some experimentation with this, and like, partially, I've deliberately chosen a career path along that way so that I could do that. Like, I have looked at ways to make sure that I have enough time that I can do stuff with Church Mag as well as with other groups. And it has been a deliberate choice so that I could experiment more. But I think recently, one of the things I've been really learning and realizing is that like, even with all this extra time I don't have the bandwidth to do everything I want to do. There's like a million things I would love to do really well, but like, if I try and go after all of them, then I'm just not going to do anything well. It's like the getting things done quote: you can do anything, but you can't do everything. I think that's the quote. Like, with enough time, you could do anything. I'm not entirely certain that's completely true, but pretty much true, at least. But like, yeah, so that's something that I appreciate from your situation, that you're playing to your strengths, whereas I guess I've had the opportunity, and like, I'm using this side project to help me develop that skill. Like, that was one of the main reasons I started this new site, was I know that if I love something, or if I'm learning something, or if I'm focusing on something, I want to write about it. That's why I write for Church Mag. That's why I've written about my faith as well, because those are important, big things for me. That's why when I started teaching, I wrote about teaching a lot. And so I wanted to develop this skill, and I was kind of like trying to game myself. So like, I knew if I had a blog, I'd write about it. And if I wrote about it, then I'd do more of it. So I think that was a reason why that was like the main reason I started this site and trying to do that.
And I think that you have those moments where you have those strengths for yourself, and realizing that at that point, that time that you have is a huge opportunity, and to make the most of it. And I was actually in ministry for a while, doing youth ministry. There'd be times where I just have a lot of time for myself. And so I was in a similar situation where I would just simply invest in myself in this process. And so I would take that extra 3 hours and do a lot of different things. And so I found myself trying to curate YouTube videos, and I found myself trying to start a blog, which I had no idea about. And I tried to develop youth ministry resources and try to do videography and streaming and social media, and all of those things were new, but I had the bandwidth to learn them and the, I guess, humility to fail and just to kind of keep pushing forward. I don't think I would have called it that in the time, but I was really trying to get to that point where I felt like I could just take on what I needed to take on. And now I'm in a place where it's a 24-hour or a 40-hour-a-week job plus an hour driving and a 3-year-old that's extremely active. And so I just live in what I have now, and the resources are a little bit different. And my time management, my priorities in this process are a little bit different. And so for me, I value time with my family. And so I'm just not going to learn as much stuff right now. And for some people, they're like, oh my goodness, I don't think I could ever survive there. And I think that I can. It's just, that's my priority right now.
No, absolutely. Like I'm kind of also aware that there's a time coming, probably not that far in the future, where I will have a family as well. And that is like getting married has changed everything for me in such a strong way. Like I've cut back on so much since I got married. I realized I just couldn't continue doing everything that I wanted, everything I was doing or wanted to do, being married. And that has been a real blessing and a reward. Like I have gained so much more out of the things I have been, I've continued doing in every area. Like it's grown more, like in my marriage, in my church life, in my photography, like all of those have all grown, and writing as well. They've all become more successful since I reduced other things. But like I'm not doing as much as well. So and I know when kids come along, that will be the same thing again. I'll probably have to make some tough decisions, cut some things. Yeah, I'm trying to do as much as I can now, kind of as well, so that when that happens, I'll be ready for it in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say also just realize what that calling process is, because for me, this counseling stuff, I could say, you know what, I already have some establishedness in the social media stuff. I'm going to live there. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But for me, the calling of working with people that are suffering and hurting, that's where I want to be at. And social media is a side thing that I really enjoy and really love for my own personal sake, and something I have been able to help churches in the past do. But man, that calling that God gave me, I can't escape it. And I also know that being an entrepreneur is not my strength. I hate raising money for myself. And so everything that comes with being an entrepreneur is just something I want to avoid like the plague for now. Not that it's bad. It's just not for me.
I find yeah. So one of the things I've been wondering about, I wrote a post and I have not published it. And this was an idea that I got from Michael Hyatt. And I don't know if I will publish it because I don't know if I agree with myself. But it's the kind of idea that he says about, the sort of like the Walt Disney quote, we don't make money. We don't make movies to make money. We make money to make more movies. Mm-hmm. And like the kind of idea there of like, oh yeah, we're not selling out in a way. Like we want to make the best movies we can so that we can make even better movies and more better movies. And I think that is the entrepreneurial side. Sure. But I've seen people use that justification, and like, obviously I am not one to judge someone's motives or someone's heart. I have no idea. Like, I can get impressions, but my impressions could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But I know from myself that there's such a fine line between, I just want to make more things. I just want to help more people. And I want to do this all the time. And I don't want to have a boring 9-to-5 job. And let's see if I can, I can make money doing this. And that's okay, because I can help more people in a different way or something like that.
Sure. And I think that it's probably a seasonal thing of right now. When I first started doing this, it was a little bit financial in the sense that if I was going to keep doing this, I need to make money to keep doing it. Otherwise, there's no way I'm paying the bills this month because surprisingly, ministry doesn't earn you millions of dollars like I thought it would. And so I had to be very intentional about what is working, what is not working. But then going to the next step of it, of now I'm at a place where it's not week to week and it's not month to month. And so for me, the more precious time or the more precious resource is time. And so it just shifts as you go along. And right now I can't give up time for anything. And so I need to hold on to that for everything. And so entrepreneurship doesn't work as well with a time aspect that's time sensitive in this process. So
no, I think like that's really, really wise, because like time's the one thing you cannot get more of. Like there are ways to get more money. Some better than others. Like robbing a bank, don't recommend it. But you know, selling your kidney, maybe not the best thing. But you know, there are ways to get more money. But like once time's gone, you can't. So like something to think about, especially with side projects. Like you know, if you take on something on the side, then you are saying, I'm not going to use that time to spend with my family, to invest in my day job, to help out a charity or something. What I guess one of the things I've struggled with a bit recently is the sort of idea of something which I've completely forgotten now. So go ahead, Jeremy. You can speak for a bit.
well, I'll just say this last thing, and then I'll let you take it where you want to go. But time is a resource that helps you get what you want to do, and then also realize that doing the fun stuff in and of itself can be a reward. And so you can enjoy the process of learning new things if that's something you enjoy. And so for me, all that time where I got to learn how to do videography, how to run After Effects and to use Photoshop and to blog well was enjoyable. And so there was, even if I didn't directly get paid, which I had to get paid to continue to do, if I didn't always get paid as much as I thought I could, that learning process was an enjoyment for me. And so I enjoy just sitting and reveling in the fact that there's a whole entire world out there that is trying to do great things. And so for me, that was a benefit in that process. And so I was getting something out of it.
Yeah. There's, do you know, I was talking about this loads about 2 years ago, the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Like, where if you get, it's amazing how much more powerful intrinsic motivation, if you find the task enjoyable in and of itself and the process is rewarding, just how much more successful people are. And I think that's been something I've tried to hold on to with the side project, and something Eric's encouraged me with as well. Actually, he was like, yeah, just make sure you have fun. You know, you're not, especially as it's something where I'm not making money directly off, at least. And it is fun. And that, I think, like, yeah, my two reasons, I guess, for doing it are because I wanted to help me learn and I wanted to have fun. And like a third reason, which I would like to work out more how I can do this, I want to help people with it. And I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out, but
sure.
Yeah.
And you have to have, I think you have to have that established for yourself. If you never earn a single dime from this, is that okay? If you never do get a consulting gig because you just don't develop the network or the resource chops to get to that point, or if you don't actually establish a ministry, is that okay in that process? And so just know what your wins and losses are ahead of time. And that's probably going to set you apart from the other person that says, I can do what Michael Hyatt can do. And then an hour or two later, they've stopped. They put in a ton of energy only to not do anything with it. And I think that that's a big insight to yourself, and probably will actually help you be successful in your marriage and your relationships and work forever and ever. That's big.
Man, I have been the guy who was like, oh, I can do this better than those guys, or I could do this too. And, for a week or a couple of months, I pour lots of energy in, and then it's more difficult than I thought. Bye.
Sure, I've been there too, and I think that that's okay. It's just to have the humility to admit that, and then to avoid that as you've had that learning process. Because not only have I had that, I've had that, I've learned from it, and then I've had it again. And so is that even more tragic? And just to be able to hold back that process of, I can do a blog just like Eric Dye can, and then I created a blog and it worked really, really well. And I was doing it for a really long time. And then I'm like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I gave up. And then could I accidentally invest too much time that I'm taking away from my family? That's why I quit the blog in the first place, is I didn't have enough time with my family.
Wow.
And so if I try to take on something that's beyond me again, I know that we were talking in the back channel, just as a clue for everybody else, is you want to take on some of the newsletter in this process as far as Church Mag. I'm not going to commit to that because I will overwhelm myself and not be able to do it. But helping you do that well, that I can do. That's not going to be a time intensive process. Coming up with that content will take some time, and then I can just sit back and critique it. But that's still achieving the mission that I want to achieve, and it's still helping further Church Mag, but within a process of, this is my strength and I can pull that off.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things, actually, seeing everyone else's reaction to the newsletter, they're like, nope, can't do it, don't have the time, energy, whatever. And I was like, man, Chris, that's got to be true of you too. Like, do you have the space for this? So, like, one of the things I said, actually, I don't know if it was clear enough, like, if I'm doing it, then I'm going to cut back a bit on how much I write for Church Mag. Like,
yeah, you did.
Yeah. And like, partially it's been a natural thing because my passion for app reviews has died down a little bit recently. Like, there's so many apps which are quite similar. And and I've been so I think, if I'm cutting back in one area and on something else, I think that's good. I'd have one more like general discussion then. Where do you think, like, your personal site and your social media stuff that you're doing, where do you think that's going? Is it just going to stay exactly the same? Do you have any plans for that? Or are you just like riding the wave and seeing where it's going to go?
A little bit of both. I think that some people have been asking me, what about doing consulting like you did whenever I had my old thing? Because I actually had a consulting page and you could sign up for these packages and stuff like that I don't intentionally have anymore. I don't ever plan on consulting again because it's so intentional and time intensive for each church you do. I really enjoyed it, helping churches get to that point. I think if I ever get a speaking gig out of that, it's going to be able to do what I wanted to do for individual churches, but in a much grander scale. But I don't have an audience right now as far as speaking. And so if that comes of it, that'll be great. If not, that's fine too. But I think that's probably the only extra agenda I have besides sharing life with those that are interested. And I guess the other one I do talk about in a couple of videos on my website is I want to learn how to tell my story well. And right now, I think I can tell a story well personally, but I can't identify where there's stories in my life that are worth telling. And so I'm struggling with that part of it. I think I personally have one story in my life that could make you cry, and I could tell it really well right now. I've crafted it really well, but that's probably the only one I have that's just like, let's kind of hit that connection point. And so I want to be able to try to find more things in my life. And so I do a vlog every week for my life. And I think it's as much it's about sharing with people and, hey, enjoy this vlog entertainment wise, as me trying to recognize in my life, is this vlog worthy? And so I'm starting to have that extra purpose in this process where I say, do I actually have things worth telling in my life? And I'm not very insightful in that process as far as trying to identify good stories to tell. So I think that'll be a good side effect in that process.
It sounds like a good goal to go for. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, that's really interesting. It kind of sounds similar to something that I've been looking at. One of the critiques I've had, so I've had some critiques of some of my photos, like the more artsy stuff I do rather than like the stock stuff that we give away.
Mm-hmm.
And like the comment that has always been, not always been, a comment that's come up a couple of times is you don't have a voice yet. Like you haven't established your perspective on it. You're trying to like copy this, or like, you know, there's different styles going on here.
Sure.
And like I'm trying to work out how that comes across and like how I can because like it's amazing how subjective photography is. You'd think that it's really, you know, it's supposed, like one of the ideas is it's kind of supposed to be objective, but like you can take a picture in ways to completely change how a scene is without doing any Photoshop whatsoever. And that's like a skill to learn. Even one of the guys I know says that photojournalism is about trying to tell the truth, what was there.
Yeah.
And street photography is about telling lies. Like you want to hide things, and you want to, like, so, you know, if there's a big pile of garbage on a street, you want to swivel so you don't see that garbage. Or maybe you want to like really focus on that garbage, depending on what message you want to tell people.
Sure.
So like that's a thing that I'm trying to work out. Like, how can I tell stories, messages through my work as well? So.
Well, in the clinical counseling thing that I come from is everybody has access to the same world to take pictures in, and everybody has access to some kind of photography equipment. People will say, well, because I don't have what everybody else has, because I don't have what Chris has, I'm not going to be as successful as him. But the fact of the matter is you can do a lot of stuff with your camera on your phone. And so it levels the playing field in this process. Everybody, if you're blogging, everybody has access to all the same words. It's just a matter of putting them all together in the right process. And so it's not about doing that right, but that, as you said, that subjective nature of, can I craft a 600-word blog article that's going to capture the imagination of everybody? That's what I'm doing with my vlog right now. Of everybody has access to video and probably has a story to tell, but can they tell it well, and can they identify that story that they need to tell in the first place? And so it's not even about the vlogging, it's not even about the videography, though eventually that can improve the game. But if you're working from a place where you think everybody's on a different playing field, then you're probably going to fail.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Like modern smartphones are brilliant cameras, and like before I got my first standalone camera, like I was trying to do some stuff like that and using images I took with my smartphone for things. Obviously there are some advantages of a camera, in the same way like you could argue there's an advantage of having like a really nice keyboard that feels comfortable or something like that. But at the same time, yeah, you're totally right. You know, you've got the same words. If you've got a really good keyboard, you've got the same words as someone else.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Thanks for chatting, Jeremy. It was really cool to find out a bit more about why you've been doing this and what you're up to. And,
it's always good to talk with a friend. Enjoy it.
True. Well, bye then.
All right. See ya.